Okay, welcome back to Cosmic Reach. This is currently Alpha 0.4.1, so one day after the Alpha version released. And today I want to play around with some energy-related things, one of those being the laser gun, and then two blocks. One of them is the laser emitter, and then the other one is the laser splitter. And I have three lamps right here. If I right-click while using the laser gun, I can shoot out a projectile, or a little pellet. I don't really know if these have an official name, but I'm going to call them an energy pellet or an energy particle. And I do think that they're supposed to be related to energy specifically, and not just like a harmful projectile or something, because they seem to interact only with things that are associated with electricity or machines or something like that. So for example, you can toggle lamps, which are obviously associated with electricity. If you look at the bottom of the screen in my hotbar, whenever I swap over to the laser gun, you'll see at the right side of the hotbar that there's a little orange rectangle that pops up. I think that's supposed to be the gun's durability, but right now I think that durability is not actually fully implemented in the game yet, so we can pretty much just shoot this forever with infinite ammo, which is really convenient for testing purposes because I don't have to worry about refilling the ammo or charging it up or anything like that. One thing I'll note about this gun and the little particles is that when the particle hits something solid, it just gets deleted, it gets destroyed and disappears. But if I shoot it up towards the sky, it just seems to go forever until the point where it's a single pixel and then it just disappears due to the 3D projection. And I'm not sure if each of these particles has a timer associated with it or not. If not, then I could see that these projectiles go on forever in the memory of the game, and maybe that could cause a problem. Like if there are too many and I just keep doing this and they're all alive in the game world, maybe eventually that could cause a problem if it's like a static memory pool that would crash if it overflows or something. Maybe not. I don't know how exactly it's implemented. So that's the laser gun, and next up is the laser emitter. So to make one of these, it's just an aluminum block with 3 hazard blocks on the bottom and then a laser gun in the center. And we also have a laser splitter. I'll get to the difference between these in a second, but you won't find the laser splitter on the right side of the screen here. You only find the emitter right here. And in order to get the splitter, you have to hover over an emitter in your hotbar and then hit the grave accent or backtick button on your keyboard like this. And you'll see that there's a little difference. A little red eyeball pops up on the image, and you can see it changing in my hand there as well. The emitter, when you place it down, it looks like this, and you can see 3 sides of it are the exact same. It just looks like aluminum, whereas this side right here looks like it has a little red eyeball, but I don't think that's supposed to be an eyeball. I think that's actually supposed to be the tip of a laser gun, because when you build one of these, there's actually a laser gun inside of there. There's no inventory for this or anything. You don't have to recharge it. It's infinite ammo, but when I click on it, it shoots out 1 projectile. So I just interacting with it and it's infinite. It shoots out a projectile just like a laser gun. I can also shoot it with a laser gun, and like I said, anything that these energy pellets hit that is machine-like or electricity associated, it shoots out, or it triggers. So it kind of makes a little chain reaction, which was kind of the inspiration for this video. I want to see what we can do with this. The other one is a splitter. And the difference between the two is that you can see the splitter has 2 eyeballs. It has one on this side, and then directly parallel 180 degrees from that, it has one right here. And it's called the splitter because if you were to hit it with an energy pellet, it essentially splits the signal. So at first the signal is going in that direction, and then the signal gets split and duplicated, which is important, in that direction and that direction, so perpendicular to the original signal. And it just keeps going until it hits something and then it stops. And you can imagine, with the whole duplicating functionality and switching directions perpendicularly, you can imagine how we could potentially create some kind of infinite energy source and then hook that up to an entire base full of lights and everything like that and all kinds of machinery, and have these things wired up with each other. So the goal for this video is to find a way to make these 3 lamps flash on and off. And of course, we could extend this all the way horizontal, and like I said, it could be just spread throughout a large base. And we want to be able to hook up these 2 blocks to figure out how to make that happen. And we want it to be efficient, because in survival mode, I'm going to have to be crafting a bunch of these emitters, and they don't seem like they're going to be very cheap. So we want to do it as efficiently as possible and without having too many of them just kind of spread all over the place where you can see them all and they're just kind of floating in the air. So the first problem to solve is how to make an infinite energy source, because if we do something like this and we make a chain reaction, there's still just 1 signal being relayed. So we need kind of an infinite signal, and it's pretty obvious how to do that right off the bat. if I make a square like this, and then I hit one of them, because it's infinite, I don't have to recharge any of these, it'll just go forever. So I can do this, and it's a very consistent clock cycle. So if I stand right here, the time it takes for this one energy particle to go all the way around the loop is pretty quick. I think it's about half a second. I can extend the boundaries of this. I'm going to call this a generator, by the way, because I don't know what else to call it, but it's essentially an energy generator. And if I extend the boundaries, so I move this one that way, this one that way, and this one that way, then I can lessen the clock cycle. So it takes longer for this energy particle to go all the way around, and then I can potentially route this out somewhere at a slower pace. I was thinking, how else could I do this? And one way is to aim the things like this, the emitters, because you don't actually need any space in between them. So if I right click, you can hear from the sounds, it's working. It's just going extremely fast because there's no distance in between. I'm not going to do that for this video because I want to actually see the energy transfer so that I know what's going on. And it's kind of cool to see. So I want to be able to see the energy transferring between the two. So you can do that, and that works. Or I was thinking, how can I lessen the surface area? Because that's one of the main goals. I don't want to have a massive one there, if I want a slow clock cycle. So how can I do this, but much more condensed? And what I found is that if I use an emitter here, and then I use a splitter here, a splitter has two signals here, or two routes. So if I right-click this one will shoot an energy particle to here, and then this one will shoot an energy particle back to here. You can see if you actually stand in the middle and you get in the way, it'll cancel the signal. But I think it's like 2 pixels of width, so you really have to stand right in the middle or else nothing will happen. So this one sends something to here, and this sends something back to it, and then this one sends something back to this, and then back, and then back. So that's how that's working. But at the same time, it's shooting the energy out this side as well. So you can see how you might be able to route this one to other things. And of course, you can push either of these in either direction in order to increase the clock speed. So if you think that this is too fast for you, you can push this one back a few blocks, and it'll become slower. One thing I'll quickly note that I think will be a good suggestion for the game, and I think honestly is sorely needed, is that if you have too many of these right next to each other, or really anything more than maybe 3 or 4 of them, which isn't that many, it's really hard to tell what's going on. Some of these might be splitters, some of them might be emitters, and you don't really know which way they're pointing if they're all next to each other. And even if they're not directly next to each other, even if they're like this, and they were all pointing different ways and stuff, it's kind of hard to figure out what's going on by looking at them sideways, because you gotta kind of move around and go in between them, and you potentially would have to break some of them just to see what's going on, so you might end up dismantling your entire contraption, which obviously isn't good, and it's not a good player experience. So I'm thinking one thing that would really help is if, instead of just the texture being the same and the only difference being where the little red dot is, if on top of the texture there could be a little tick mark, so a little darker shade of aluminum in the direction that it's pointing. So right now this one is pointing that direction, so maybe we'd have a little tick mark starting here and going to here on the top of the texture. And that way, whenever you rotate it, the texture should follow. And so you can tell just by looking from a bird's eye view where each of them is pointing, so you don't have to be breaking stuff in order to figure out how your contraptions are working. Or if you need to go back for maintenance, it's a lot easier to do this. Like right there, I didn't even realize this was a splitter. I thought this was an emitter, but when I look on this side, I see it's a splitter because it's on this side as well. So in this case, you'd have 2 tick marks. You'd have one that goes this way, and you'd have one that goes this way. And then, of course, if you rotate it or whatever, the tick marks would follow. So I think that's going to be crucial to really tell these apart. And then I'm assuming maybe we'll have more machines that look like this. So yeah, that would be really helpful. But onto this contraption. So I want to route this energy particle to flash each of these lights, the blue, green, and red lights. So if I was to put an emitter right here, that works. It doesn't actually, I mean, it changes the direction. It doesn't give us any extra sources of energy or anything. It just changes the direction, which is fine. And the next thing I want to do is I want to put one right here. So that'll change the direction again, and it'll hit the blue light. So now we have the blue light flashing. It's consistent and everything, and I keep saying that because I want you to keep that in mind, because we're going to come across a bug here soon. So the clock speed is still consistent. It's firing at the same rates every single time. And the flashing of the blue lights is on, off, very predictably. And I want that to be the case for the other lights as well, but I'm going to show how that's not possible here in a second. But first, let's see how we can actually extend this one energy generator to create multiple sources. So in order to do that, I need to be able to hijack this energy pellet. If I put another emitter right there, it's not going to work, because obviously that hijacks the signal. So how can I do this? I can delete this, and I can make that a splitter instead. So now we basically just duplicated. Remember I said it was important that we're duplicating and splitting it? The duplication is important because we can make a new source. So we're pointing that way and we're pointing this way. So now I can route this one this way, and then I can shoot it in this direction. And that allows us to hit the green one. And right now the clock speeds are still somewhat okay, but you start to see that one right there, the blue light, it's kind of sporadically turning on and off occasionally. And even if you look at the projectiles coming out of the machine, you can see that they're not exactly consistent anymore. The clock speed got messed up. Over there, the clock speed is still relatively okay. There may be little hiccups here and there, but over here it's really messed up. So it's like 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2, like that. And the lamp is not looking as good as it was before. And that's going to be a problem if you have a base and you have a bunch of lights, or just anything that needs to be synchronous. So if you have these energy pellets hitting a certain contraption and certain things have to happen in certain orders, it's not going to work, because the clock speeds get messed up as you add more and more of these emitters. And you'll see that happen more and more as I add more of them. So right now we have that one flashing and we have this one flashing, because I redirected this back signal. And so how do I extend this again and hit the red one? It's going to be the same thing. So I'm going to put a splitter right here. So now we have 2 there because I duplicated it. And then I'm going to put an emitter here and change the direction right here. And it's going to hit the red one. So now all 3 of them are flashing. So we met that objective. And I did it with the minimal amount of machines that I could. Kind of. It could technically be better, but that's only if the implementation of the splitter changes. I'll talk about that in a second, but also you'll notice that in order for me to do this, for me to turn on and off a horizontal row of lights, the direction that these machines are going is horizontally along with the lights like this, but it's also backwards in this direction. So you can see we're kind of coming diagonally. And if we were to continue the row of lights that way, then you can imagine that this would be a splitter, and then I'd have one right here, and I'd have one right here, and then this would be a splitter, and you can see how it's coming back diagonally. And there's really nothing I can do about that, because I can't pull the machines back to the left in any way, because they'd get in the way of these particles that are flying at the lamps. So I can't do something like this or put a splitter here, because if I try to do this, it'll actually shoot the other machines, and that'll mess up the clock cycle as well. So that's all screwy, and it doesn't work. With splitters right now, they can only be at a 100 degree or 180 degree angle. So splitters, automatically, they default to one eyeball being here and one red eyeball being here. And you can't actually change it to be 90 degrees. So if we could have one eyeball right here and one eyeball right here, or any other combination, that would help a ton. Because that way we wouldn't have to shoot backwards and to the right and then backwards and then to the right. Instead, we could just shoot to the right, and that's it. So you can see how the blue, the green, and the red are just kind of sporadically flashing on and off now. And if I look this way, the projectiles aren't very consistent. They're all just kind of going at their own pace. So I think things get a little screwy after a while. I mean, I guess it's following a pattern, but it's like a 1 1 2 1 1 2 1 1 2. This one is a little bit slower. I guess it's a little more consistent, but it is slower than the blue one. And this one here seems to be kind of in the middle. Maybe it's more like the green one. It's kind of flashing on and off with the green one, but the blue isn't. So like I said, it should be just on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off. But it seems to be getting a little bit messed up. So anyway, I was talking about how the machines come backwards diagonally, and if we could have splitters where we could configure it to have one side be an eyeball, is what I call them, and then on the 90-degree side be another eyeball, then we could just come in one direction, and we could reduce this surface area from a 2D surface area, and as you go down, it gets farther and farther, the block distance, to just a 1D area going directly in that direction. And you can easily see how that would work. So if I delete these, and now we only have the blue one flashing, instead of the energy coming out the back here, it would be coming out the side right here. And if that was the case, I could put a splitter right here, facing towards the green block, So one eyeball would be on this side, and one eyeball would be on this side. And then that one would shoot energy this way, and then I could do the same thing here. And you can see how that would be a one-dimensional line of machines. It would also reduce the amount of machines you need for survival mode. So in this case, I would need one machine per block, per lamp, and otherwise you need a directional one as well. So I need a directional one to change the direction from going backwards to going this way, and then I can put the splitter here and hit the green lamp. So it's actually double the amount of machines that you need. And you have to change directions, so there's no way to just have a very aesthetic looking one-dimensional line of machines. And one thing I'll throw in there about changing this block from an emitter to a splitter like this with the backtick key on your keyboard is that's actually an interesting function. I haven't seen that in any other game where you change a block's function like that, or just an item's general nature, I guess. It's probably in other games, but I just haven't seen it myself. But that would be pretty useful, I think, for other items. So for example, the laser gun, maybe one thing you could do with that is if I spam right click, you can see that it comes out in little pellets. But if I hit the back tick, maybe I could change the laser gun into like a charge mode. So it shoots a charge beam instead of individual energy pellets. So maybe I hold down right click, and instead of doing this, it charges for a few seconds and then I let go at the right time and it shoots out a big energy beam or something like that. And that could of course be used with something keeps clipping into my head there. I don't know what that is. So it is definitely possible to do something like this with the machinery that we have. It's just a little bit messy because the clock speeds are messed up and you have to kind of go in a weird direction in order to light up a horizontal row of stuff. Not that this is the only use case, obviously, but there's not much in the game right now that works with energy pellets. So I kind of have to go with an example like this just because it's so minimalistic right now. But yeah, so to recap, the few things that I think need to be changed or fixed is that it would be really nice if when you had a bunch of these next to each other, even if they're not right next to each other, even if there's some holes, it would be nice to see little ticks on the top of the texture so you could see exactly where they're pointing. That would help a lot and have us not have to deconstruct our mechanisms, our contraptions to see what's going on. The other thing is with the splitter, we need to be able to change the direction of the sources. So one here, or one here, or maybe even add more. So there could be 3 sources, 3 eyeballs instead of just 2, or maybe even 4, and maybe you could just make it really expensive to craft in survival mode. Or even 6 or 5, I guess, on the top and bottom, which I didn't think about before. But it would be useful at the very minimum, at the very least, to be able to configure where these are at, which faces of the block they're on. And that would fix this whole issue with having to go back and spending more machines on the same contraption. The other little potential bug fix, maybe, is spamming these into the air where they never hit anything. I'm not sure how the memory allocation works for these, if it's just like a static buffer or like a circular array, a ring buffer. So maybe it doesn't matter, but if it does matter, then that's something to keep in mind. And then the last thing that I mentioned is, yeah, it's getting pretty disco-y in here. Actually, let me turn the time to maybe 5,000 so nobody gets a seizure. The last thing to mention, or to keep in mind, is that the clock speed, it's fine over here at the generator, but we need these to be predictable. And it looks like the generator is actually screwing up too. I'm not sure why that would be. Maybe just the amount of energy pellets that are going on at the same time, or maybe it has something to do with the chain reaction happening. I'm really not sure. Just thinking from a developer perspective why that would be, but I'm sure there's a reason for it that can be fixed. So yeah, the clock speeds need to be consistent and predictable so that we can synchronize these different things that are going on. Just as a bonus, we can also do this. So you can automate the boomboxes. I actually haven't used those boomboxes for anything yet. I think you can tune them and everything, but yeah, I haven't seen anybody else really use them for anything, and I haven't used them for anything. Maybe I'll try to do that soon, just for a fun project. And you can also do this, of course. And one more thing I'll throw into this video is in the last couple videos, I said I was wishing that there'd be a third-person view, and there actually is. I just missed it. If you hit F5, you can do this. Pretty cool, so you can actually see my skin in single player. My new awesome skin. You can also see these in multiplayer, obviously, but I haven't really been playing on any multiplayer servers. It's a little janky right now, so if you crouch, you can see your guy's kind of always moving, and his arms look kind of weird too. And if you try to crawl, it's just the camera that crawls, it's not really the character. And if you try to punch or place something down, nothing really happens. His arms don't swing or anything. So it's in a rudimentary state, but that's all right. At least we get to see the skin from the outside. Anyway, that's all for this video, so thank you very much for watching.